Hey, welcome back to YT Finance, and this is the channel where I went to business school so you didn't need to, and today we are talking about if we should buy more Sofi stock. If you didn't know, Sofi Technologies is a fintech company or a financial technology company that gives their consumers access to various financial services and financial products through a digital app. Basically, they are a very innovative fintech company that operates as a digital bank, and today we're going to be diving into their fundamentals, their latest news updates, as well as their future predictions regarding their stock price and what professionals think this company is going to be worth in the future. For more Sofi stock videos, remember to go and smash that like button right now, comment your thoughts down below about whether or not you are going to buy more Sofi stock or not, subscribe if you are new, and without further ado, let's jump right into today's stories. So first, I'm going to say that it really depends on whether or not you should buy more Sofi stock. This is going to come down to your investing style, whether or not you are already over allocated, how much risk you want to take on, which means how much risk tolerance you have for this particular company, and how fundamentally solid your portfolio is, on top of how diversified you are in your investments. All of these things are going to help you determine whether or not you should buy more Sofi shares or not. Now, for me personally, I am just holding Sofi Technologies because I've already allocated around 4% to Sofi Technologies, and to me that is a good position. I probably will eventually go back up to a 5% portfolio allocation, but my investing style and my risk management policies don't allow me to invest more than a 5% initial allocation into any single growth company. The majority of my wealth is in index funds as well as ETFs. But without further ado, let's jump right into this article that we're going to analyze. Right now, the Sofi share price trades for around $5.76, while professionals believe the company is worth anywhere between $7 and $11. But apart from that, what should we do with Sofi Technologies, and what should we do if you have too much allocated to this company already? This normally happens to investors who jump in too early on a hype stock, which means that they are investing into a company when it's at its peak valuations or its all-time highs. And for new starter growth companies, you don't want to get stuck floating that bill, because normally companies, particularly growth and technology companies, surge originally in their stock price based off of hype, but later they pull back dramatically, and that's when you actually want to build a position in this company. So if you already have a very high average stock price to Sofi Technologies, you want to actually consider whether or not lowering and averaging down your average cost basis for this company is worth it or not, because it could potentially overexpose you to the company. Now, for me, again, any exposure over a 5% portfolio weight for an initial investment is taking on too much risk for me personally, because I have around 20 stocks that are absolutely phenomenal that have the same or similar growth that Sofi does, on top of other stocks that are very solid fundamentally. So these are blue chip dividend stocks that make up the core of my portfolio, on top of various ETFs and index funds, and I just pick and choose some growth and technology companies like Sofi or Palantir to invest into, because I think these companies are fundamentally solid for the long term. I think investors right now should hold this company for the long term, not really necessarily acquiring more, especially if it's going to risk unnecessary losses of overexposure, because if you are too overexposed to a particular company, you're taking on unnecessary risk of losses. And I can already tell that many of you already fit in this boat, which is why you need to understand and follow your own investing strategy, and to also not over allocate yourself too much to just a single growth stock. That takes on a lot of unnecessary risk, and that is not the way you build wealth over the long term. However, with that being said, let's just talk about Sofi as a company, so we can dictate where the stock price will be headed over the long term. For me personally, I plan on carrying my 4 to 5% allocation to this company regardless of the stock price. Even if it drops down to $3 per share, I still plan to hold this company for the next 5 to 10 years, unless something absolutely catastrophic happens. And that's just the type of investor I am. I will have an initial allocation into a company, and then I will start researching other companies while I leave this particular company just to appreciate over the long term. I'm not concerned with the short-term news updates for this particular company, because I think their long-term growth and fundamentals are completely intact. Right now, on a non-GAAP adjusted EBITDA basis, the company grew from $11.2 million in the second quarter of the prior year to $20.3 million in the most recent quarter of this year, which would imply their non-GAAP adjusted EBITDA surged by over 81%. And this means that Sofi Technologies is on a great path toward profitability, either in 2023, 2024, or 2025, depending on what analysts and professionals that you listen to. Now, for me personally, I think the company is going to become profitable on a GAAP basis, also known as a generally accepted accounting principles basis, in 2024, because I think that's what the data is telling us, particularly because SoFi has had an astounding quarter for personal loan originations, which jumped by over 90% year over year. It literally jumped from $1.294 billion in quarter two of 2021 to $2.472 billion in quarter two of 2022. And this is great news because it means despite a high inflation economy as well as rising interest rates, these could actually help SoFi Technologies because it communicates to us that consumers are being drawn towards SoFi Technologies for their very cheap interest rates compared to their competition, and rising interest rates, like I said last video, is actually going to help out various financial institutions who get to somewhat soften the blow because they get to adjust their own interest rates to stay competitive with the overall market. So rising interest rates are not going to impact them as negatively as it will other companies that have loads of debt on their balance sheet, because SoFi and other banks and even fintech companies can increase their own interest rates to offset any losses that they experience from a rising interest rate economy and an economy that has high inflation. In contrast, with their very impressive personal loan originations, their student loan originations have absolutely cratered by around 54% year over year and a loss of 59% quarter over quarter. And that is not good news. However, I do like how their personal loan originations are somewhat offsetting any loss of business that they have experienced over in their student loan origination business, which both fall under their lending segment. So how is SoFi going to be impacted by the student loan forgiveness? Well, this author actually says that it is mixed, that SoFi Technologies will have some pros and cons to this, and I actually think there's more pros than cons here, and I'll tell you why. Even if the student loan forgiveness goes through, where former students who have debt who make less than $125,000 could be eligible for $10,000 worth of student loan forgiveness. And I think that's actually really good, because as these particular former students get some loan forgiveness, they will most likely go to refinance their loans to continue paying on them to eventually pay them off. And even if this doesn't happen, it doesn't even matter. Why? Because the majority of SoFi Technologies' customer base, in regards to their student loan segment, make more than $125,000. However, with the student loan forgiveness plan now in place and the student loan moratorium potentially ending by the end of this year, these are both very positive catalysts, in my opinion, for SoFi Technologies. Now, I think we do need to mention that it could absolutely be horrific if the student loan moratorium was extended again. We could see the stock price for SoFi Technologies absolutely plummet, but if that doesn't happen, like we said earlier, this is going to be a very positive catalyst. It's going to give them very good tailwinds to press through this very negative macroeconomic environment. And as SoFi Technologies' student loan originations continuously increase throughout the year of 2022 into 2023, I think investors will start to realize the value of this overall company. Now, even though I think this is good news, the author of this particular article that we are analyzing does not think that this is going to be good for SoFi Technologies. He says that the student loan forgiveness plan might come under attack due to legal issues, which was echoed by the New York Times as well as Reuters. However, I don't even care whether or not the student loan forgiveness plan goes through or not. SoFi Technologies really won't be impacted that much. The main problem for SoFi Technologies is the student loan moratorium, where former students are not required to pay on their federal student loans, and those federal student loans are not accruing interest right now, which takes away the sense of urgency to refinance their student loans right now. So honestly, I could care less about the student loan forgiveness plan as long as the student loan moratorium ends when the Biden administration said it would by the end of 2022. Then I think SoFi Technologies is going to be on a very good growth trajectory. Also, like I said earlier, the reason why I don't really care much about the student loan forgiveness is that SoFi targets students who literally generate or earn more than $125,000, which wouldn't even make them eligible to receive any student loan forgiveness, because the average weighted income of SoFi Technologies customers who want to refinance their student loans or are student loan borrowers is around $170,000. So keeping this in mind, that's why I really don't care about the student loan forgiveness. I only really care about the student loan moratorium. Now, another good point that's been brought up is, will the student loan forgiveness impact the economy? This author basically says no, it really won't impact the economy, but I think it will in some instances. For instance, right now, as investors aren't paying on their student loans, they have some extra cash, which they are using to go on vacation or to buy certain items. They are not being smart right now by paying down high interest debt, and this means that this is actually accumulating escalating an even worse inflation problem. However, once the student loan moratorium ends and they will be obligated to start to pay back their student loans, this is going to lower the overall spending in the economy, which will lower overall inflation, and I think will actually reflect very positively on the economic environment. However, the author of this article doesn't think that it's going to have a meaningful impact on the US economy, but I really would need to know what he means by a meaningful impact, because I do agree with him, it's going to be on a much smaller scale. So is SoFi's price forecasts very positive right now? Well, the consensus numbers, price estimates, price targets, and projections for the stock price are actually pretty solid, both of which, even from naysayers as well as bullish investors, come in higher than what the stock's current price is. However, like we said earlier, a huge problem with this is going to be if the student loan moratorium gets extended again to mid or even late 2023. Now, I personally do not think it will be extended again. However, if it is, please keep that risk in the back of your mind. And this is another reason why we wouldn't want to overexpose ourselves to this company, because there is a lot of risk here. The stock price could absolutely plummet very, very low if the student loan moratorium were ever to be extended again, which is why the author of this article says that this company is a hold right now. So he gives Sofi Technologies a hold rating instead of a buy rating or a sell rating. He says for the short term, Sofi Technologies stock price will continue to trend lower and be very bearish until we can get some more clarity when the student loan moratorium officially ends. Like once it actually ends, not just sayings about when it's going to end. When it actually ends, then we can start to be very positive and bullish on Sofi Technologies. But until then, it may be worth the wait from a risk to reward perspective for Sofi Technologies. But overall, he says that the long-term prospects of this company are still intact, but we are going to have to see what the short term has for us. I also want to bring up two other articles that highlight 3 growth stocks to buy hand over fist in September. And on both of these lists, they highlight Sofi Technologies SOFI stock. And I do tend to agree with these authors, saying that I like that they are putting Sofi Technologies on various investors' radar. However, I'm going to more lean toward the hold rating instead of a buy rating. But again, like we said in the beginning of this video, it's really going to depend on when or how allocated you are, or what your investment style is, or how comfortable you are taking on risk, and if you are doing it properly. Because you being okay with risk does not mean you can go all in on just 1, 2, or 3 stocks and have a fantastic portfolio. That's not the way it works. That would mean that you are actually a terrible investor and that you are taking on large amounts of unnecessary risk, which is why these articles highlight other companies that you could be buying, such as Matterport, Rigetti Computing, as well as Sofi Technologies. And I actually have a video that I did a while ago on Rigetti, so I might actually do an update video on that. But that is all I have for you on today's SoFi stock news updates. Remember to go and smash that like button for more SoFi stock videos in the future. Subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you in the next YT video.